Hey, well, welcome back to Shut Up and Ball. I am Aaron Chow, accompanied by Mr. John Harris, as always. And we're back reacting to week 11 of the NFL. And we're starting to kind of head not to the home stretch. We're like, probably approaching that. Like, if you're thinking about relay 4x100, which I never did track. I don't know about you, John, but I never did. I hated it. Put a ball in my hands. But anyways, I forget. I think they call the third leg. They got before the anchor. The anchor's the last person. But I feel like we're at that point in the season where it's starting to become crunch time for some teams, and other teams, we're starting to eliminate teams from the picture mathematically too. So, anyways, got a busy week ahead of us. Obviously, it's Thanksgiving week. We'll get into those picks next episode. But right before I dive into our reactions, obviously, as always, please like, comment, subscribe. Watch on YouTube. We are getting closer to 1,000 subs there. And then if you are listening via a podcast medium, whether it be Apple, Spotify, etc., rate, review, however it's done there. And anyways, gonna start with my game because not because it's my team, but they happen to play on Thursday, and feels like I forget too. I'm not sure. Has Dallas had a Thursday nighter this year? Have y'all had one? I forget. I'm not. Or is it Thanksgiving kind of count for y'all usually?
I know Thanksgiving we do, but I don't think we've had one.
Okay. Well, anyways, it feels like my game was like weeks ago compared to, because then everything happened Sunday. But I'm sure this loss still fresh in the memory of my Green Bay Packers as the Tennessee Titans, they beat my Packers 27-17. Looked like it'd be a close game entering the second half. But Titans pull away there as Packer offense got stalled. I'll throw it to you first. I don't have much of a soliloquy, but what were your thoughts in regards to the Thursday night result?
Watching this game, honestly, the only thing that really stood out to me was the Packers' run defense was actually pretty decent here. Derrick Henry didn't have any major game-changing runs that just turned into something massive, like a 50-yard play. He averaged 3 yards a carry. So for the most part, they held strong. The issue was, on top of the fact that Derrick Henry was slowly grinding stuff out, I think that just wore the entire defense down, because then we started to see big plays late, especially from Treylon Burks, coming off of IR, finally back from injury. He had a big play late in the game. So, the Derrick Henry effect was still real. But other than that, I did think the Packers defense, for the most part, as good as you can possibly do, contained Derrick Henry for most of the game. But still, in Derrick Henry fashion, 87 yards and a touchdown. He also threw a touchdown, which was kind of surprising. But other than that, I don't know. I mean, I don't have much else to say. Titans are just a really well-coached team, and every time I see them play, I just can't help but think that, because I don't know. I think they have a really good roster, but it seems like they always just play above and beyond, even when they have injuries, different holes, just all this different kind of stuff that can go on. The production keeps on going, and Titans are a good team.
Yeah, I think that's a point of preference to that, because once again, to put some respect on Ryan Tannehill's name, 22 for 27, 333 yards. I mean, he was on point most of the game. And like you mentioned, Packer run defense. I mean, Kirk Herbstreit mentioned it a lot. I mean, they were loading the box and leaving corners on islands, which presented a lot of one-on-one opportunities. Like you mentioned with Treylon Burks, Robert Woods, has solid performance, and then also just off the play action game too. They got a lot of their tight ends involved. And, Austin Hooper had 2 touchdowns. And, Okonkwo hit us once deep. So, just typical Tennessee fashion. Yes, they're going to predominantly run the ball, but they do take, I won't say calculated shots too, but, they're willing to take shots downfield when you're being over aggressive. And, like we saw, it's obvious they have more confidence Tannehill than they do of Malik Willis. So, probably further, if it extinguishes that, at least Malik Willis for starter right now, flame, if there was one. But also respect to the Titans defense too. Like we mentioned previously, kind of like New England, they typically start off getting cooked by a couple of teams, and everyone's like, oh man, this defense stinks. but then as the year goes on, as they start coaching up guys or figuring out some of the new pieces they have, or how to defend certain teams, they get better. And we saw in the second half with this one. I mean, didn't help that Rodgers had a few plays that he missed, just throws that I think, as we all saw, there are a couple. There's one on that Lazard crosser, just missed him. I mean, so and I think even that last play, Rodgers took the blame there, shouldered the blame for that one, and not that he deserves all of it, but it kind of goes to show Packer pass offense, not that great, especially once against Tennessee, they matched up really well, and they kind of took away the run game, as the run game was ineffective. So I'm not too shocked by the results, and I mean, good game for Christian Watson, I guess. Kind of had 2 touchdowns, but that's once again not much production otherwise. So game win as I thought it would, and like I mentioned, I think that. I know I mentioned before, but I think that's the official nail in the coffin. Grant said I think the final absolute end to our season here will be Sunday night. But for the Titans, they are creeping right back up towards the top of the NFC again, John. Everyone last year, they were the surprise 1 seed, and right now they're right in the thick of things to be the 1 seed too. Not even like they're in the wild card. So who knows? Maybe they'll grab and steal that 1 seed again this year with the craziness going on in the AFC. But anyways, that's the Thursday game. Now we move to the Sunday games. Gonna start with one that really did. The game itself was boring, but things that happened afterwards have kind of made some news headlines. And it is the uneventful New England Patriots. They beat the Jets 10-3. It was 3-all, but it's like 20-30 seconds left. My guy, one of my rookies, Marcus Jones, took a punt return in, won the game. I think it was also the first punt return of the season. So what a timely time for that. But yeah, John, you probably know, in case you don't know, a lot of people point the finger at, what am I blanking on? Zach Wilson. And his post-game comments didn't help when asked, if, hey, like, what was it again? It's like, do you take the blame or for this? Do you remember the quote that the reporter asked?
They asked if he felt like the offense let the defense
and he
down.
Said no.
And he said no.
So yeah, your thoughts on that and just this overall boring-ish game?
On the game, don't have a ton of thoughts. There wasn't a whole lot went on. It's strange because when you look at like the stats for both teams, you'd think that the Patriots would have put up a lot more points here, but the Jets defense, they just started to hold strong, especially once the Patriots would kind of get on the edge of field goal range, and it was a very windy game, so like taking field goals wasn't like normal. So there was a lot more times where teams would just punt or go for it in this one. So shout out to both defenses because they both showed up and did their job. Now on the Zach Wilson stuff, I do think that there's kind of a bit of an overreaction all of a sudden of hate in his direction, specifically for his play. I think that people are all of a sudden calling him a bust and blah, 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 all these kind of things. And I feel like people just don't really learn, or they don't care or don't try to learn, because it's like, did you not just see what happened to Justin Fields? Literally to start the season, everybody was calling him a bust, and then some stuff changes and he looks amazing, and now everybody's saying he's a franchise quarterback, and they're saying, oh, the Jets should have taken Justin Fields. Those same people are saying that once again, or probably, trashing Justin Fields just a month ago. So I'm not out on Zach Wilson yet. That said, he did not play the greatest of games, but I saw this coming. Like, it's Bill Belichick. There's very few quarterbacks, if ever, that have had success against the Patriots, and so I really didn't expect Zach Wilson to come out and light the world up. That being said, for his post-game press conference, I was not a fan of his comments. I just think back to basically any other quarterback in the NFL right now and the way that they've sort of handled this stuff. Someone posted a little montage of current quarterbacks responding to a very similar type of question. Dak Prescott for the Cowboys owned up to it. Josh Allen, even a few weeks ago, said, that's on me. You can't win games when your quarterback sucks. And like, obviously Josh Allen doesn't suck, but he had a couple turnovers and he was owning up to it. I think it kind of conveniently got leaked today, but Justin Fields this past week, like his defense, they didn't have the greatest of overall games, but near the end of the game, they got a stop and they gave the offense the ball back to try and go and take the lead. And Justin Fields did not. I believe that was the drive in which he threw an interception to basically end the game. And apparently afterwards, he stood up in front of the whole team and he apologized and said that the offense let the defense down. And some of his teammates from the defensive side cut him off like mid-apology and were like, "No, we got your back, bro." And so, there's just other quarterbacks that have sort of responded differently to this. And I don't know if you've sort of kept up with it on Twitter, but there's kind of been a flurry of responses from different Jets players. Like Elijah Vera Tucker accidentally liked the tweet, accidentally is what he said, that was trashing Wilson. Robert Saleh was non-committal on who the starting quarterback would be moving forward. And I do want to talk about that in a little bit, actually, after we give both of our takes. So then Elijah Moore posted a picture of himself throwing a football to, I guess, reference that he wants to play quarterback. I don't know. There's just a lot of drama going on right now with the Jets. But for that post-game press conference, I was not really a fan of the way that Zach Wilson handled it. And, I hope that this is a live and you learn moment for him because, like, just straight up, yeah, the offense let the defense down.
Yeah. I think the score...
And for the record, that's not just on Zach too. Like that's the whole offense let the defense down.
Yeah. I think the score is a little bit, the fact that it was 3-3 for so long and that the Jets could have won probably is feeding into this because I think people are forgetting too, like Nick Folk, you mentioned very windy day, tough throwing conditions. Nick Folk, he missed 2 field goals too. So it could have, it easily could have been 9-3 even before that punt return, and if he does do it, and that's like, 16-3, and it's a little bit different story. It's like, man, the Jets offense as a whole sucked, and so did Zach Wilson. Maybe a little bit of the fact that they had hope at the end played into this more, and it being New York, of course. In regards to his comments, I'll start there. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously he probably should have taken the blame, and everyone's going after his self-awareness. I'm assuming it's just a confidence thing. I'm not trying to make excuses for him because he did play terrible, and he did play a big fact in the fact that they lost. I'm not sure if he just wanted to get off this podium because that was like the last thing that, his last question at that moment. So maybe he just was kind of had a moment of honesty, but didn't think that, maybe I should, I don't know. And who knows? And we don't know how he is in the locker room, so all we can do is speculate. But yeah, like this game, I think people forget to, like, Elijah Vera Tucker. You mentioned him; he's not playing. He hasn't been. He's been out. He's out the rest of the year. Mekhi Becton, a first-round guy that they invested in, been out, and they've kind of had this hodgepodge offensive line. And they also lost Breece Hall, who remember they started this win streak because they got him going. But like you saw with the Patriots, even this game, run game wasn't going at all, and Jets became one-dimensional. And you mentioned Bill Belichick, great against rookies, and now Zach Wilson isn't a rookie, but young quarterbacks in general, like you mentioned, struggled. Yeah, and we saw it today, Sunday, and Chris Sims kind of mentioned it. Their offense is still young. It's still real. Like we act like Elijah Moore, because he requested a trade, like, that he's a bona fide, lock it in guy. He's still in his second year and he's been struggling too. And, Garrett Wilson's been, he's still a rookie. So a lot of guys too, it doesn't help that they got a lot of guys chirping in that locker room, even though they really shouldn't. But hey, it's New York. So I'm assuming, a lot of them have, I guess, more microphones, attention to them. But yeah, it just obviously was not a great day in the office for Zach Wilson. I'm not even going to try to defend that. It was a bad day. But windy conditions. And once again, it'll show you too. I saw a stat. I think Zach Wilson was like 3rd in average depth of target, while Mac Jones was like bottom, like 4 or 5 in average depth of target. So too, a little bit on the offensive coaching staff. Like you saw the Patriots, they were able to run the ball a little bit, but then a lot of the short passing game, as evident by the fact that Ramondre Stevenson was their leading receiver in both catches and yards. And same with Jacoby Myers, both, relatively, they knew the conditions. It was at New England. They probably, felt that, hey, we'll just play it safe and wait for them to make mistakes. And once again, like people recently getting upset at Zach Wilson for all the interceptions. Didn't turn the ball over this game. And I know he only got sacked 4 times, but he could have got sacked a lot more. So to all the people that are saying, oh, Mike White or Joe Flacco would have won that game. No, they would have gotten sacked 8 or 9 times just watching back that game. And I don't think they would have fared much better under those conditions. So, I think it's just a typical Patriot game where, like I said, they're not afraid to play ugly, win ugly. And for the Jets, like they had a few eye-popping wins, because their defense scored points and they had Breece Hall. And then now we're expecting the offense to be better. We're trying to hold it to those standards when different time of year and, like you mentioned, pretty good defense. So, I'm not giving Zach Wilson a pass, but yeah, just like you hit it perfectly. He's only in the second year. Like he still has time to grow. So, what did you want to mention about? Is it the potential Jets quarterback controversy?
Yeah. So they asked Robert Saleh after the game some question basically asking like, who's your quarterback moving forward? Is there any controversy? And he was non-committal to starting Zach Wilson next week. He didn't say he was getting benched, but he wouldn't name who the starting quarterback was moving forward. And they asked him about it. They said, so you're not committing? And he goes, no, we got to look at the film and evaluate moving forward. Just wanted to hear your thoughts. I mean, I kind of figure that what you'd say, but just want to hear your thoughts on potentially benching Zach Wilson.
Well, jokingly, I want to start out with, I should have mentioned this too. Like, apparently, you seen the coin thing, right? That person that did the coin flip for every Jets game to determine if they like.
Yes.
So according to the coin, like all is according to a plan. So why are we all surprised? And apparently they're going to lose this week.
That guy.
So maybe Robert Saleh is like, I need to save Zach Wilson. They're going to bench him this week from the coin. We're going to lose, and boom, he can come back and be the hero.
If anyone doesn't understand, there was a guy who before the season started went through the entire Jets schedule and he just flipped the coin to decide who would win and who would like which games they would win and lose. And so far through 11 games, he has gotten every single one right based on that coin flip. And so I think he's a Jets fan. And so literally after they lost to the Patriots, he posted on Twitter retweeting his own post about the initial coin flip post and just said, I'm sorry. So he's taken blame for this.
Yeah. But in regards to, I guess, what, Saleh said, it's part of me thinks it's a little bit of the New York media. And I think the New York media effect is real and the pressure of their fans. I just never seen a fan base just turn on people so quickly, so fast, just, every which way. And I mean, yeah, I think it's fair to think about maybe benching him for a game, maybe, at least because, like I said, Zach did not really see the field well. Granted, tough conditions, but he's still obviously got room to grow. I definitely agree with that. So maybe that's why. Maybe Robert Saleh, you gotta try something different, get a spark going, because they are in playoff contention and such. So I wouldn't be opposed as much as a Zach Wilson fan as I am. I wouldn't be opposed if he does make a move. It's understandable, but honestly, and I know once again I'm a Zach Wilson fan, I just feel like if they make a move, it's probably because, all right, y'all want to see the life without Zach Wilson, especially with this offensive line. Let's go to throw out Joe Flacco or Mike White, whoever's second string, and I imagine they're probably going to struggle. I'm not saying he's going to set them up to fail, but give them a shot, and then I wouldn't be shocked if he's like, yeah, well, that's why Zach's our guy after a loss if they lose to the Bears. So once again, the coin predicts they will lose to the Bears. So I'm not taking too much of a big deal because I still see the arm talent. I still see it at times. It's just like, yeah, this Jets offense isn't as like pristine as everyone's tried to make it out to be. I think that's been part of the issue too. So.
Yeah, I mean, the arm talent's definitely there. I think it's just really the decision making right now, and hopefully that's something that can be fixed because we've seen other quarterbacks struggle with that. But overall, yeah, I think it's a slippery slope because once you kind of bench a young quarterback, like I can't think of the last time an NFL team in year 2 of an NFL if a NFL quarterback's career, you bench him like midway through the season. And then eventually he like comes back and is like the starter and becomes the franchise guy. Like I mean,
if we're comparing the two, because we have someone that loves to compare the two, I know. Remember Tua? He got taken out at the end of games in his rookie year.
Yeah, but the end of games feels a little different than just like, all right, this guy's the starter moving forward. Like, all right, if you're playing bad in the middle of a game,
that's what I was going to ask. Like,
that feels a little different.
Did he remain? I'm guessing he did remain the starter, right? Or did they eventually give Fitzpatrick?
Yeah, he remained the starter, but then Fitzpatrick came like towards the end of the game because he wasn't doing very well, and then he like led the game winning.
Yeah, but he was still a starter after that, right? That's what I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he still was.
That's the only thing I can think of somewhat.
Also, but then like even then, so literally at the end of that season, they fired Brian Flores. So it's like they made their decision. The coach is out. Like the guy who made that decision, they sided with Tua. And so with Robert Saleh, it becomes sort of a slippery slope of like, okay, which one does the organization actually value more, you or Zach Wilson? Because if you make this decision, this could be the end of your career. If it doesn't, not career, your tenure in New York, if the front office is siding with Zach Wilson like Miami did. Also, I just think people got to be careful what they wish for because, like, yeah, okay, everybody remembers last year with Mike White when he threw like 4 touchdowns against the Bengals, but they forget that 2 weeks later he threw 4 interceptions. So, like, you know, I think that people are really glorifying like the highlights of those other guys when they've played those very limited moments, and they're comparing that to the very low points that Zach Wilson has had, but they're kind of ignoring the reason those guys are backups. Like, come on, 37-year-old Joe Flacco, he's not the answer. Mike White has been a career backup. I remember he couldn't even make the Cowboys. Like, he got beat out by Cooper Rush and Ben DiNucci. So, like, I don't know. I mean, he had that one good game last year, but I just think it's a slippery slope. I think there's kind of, like you said, some media overreaction because it is New York. It's a tough market. They want him to win. They feel like they have a really good defense and they can make a playoff run because of some of the games. But I don't know. I think that's I was talking to a Jets fan on Twitter yesterday, and he basically said that he believes this roster, if you take away quarterbacks, is good enough to win a Super Bowl. And I was like, all right, Jets fans need to calm down. Yeah. Like, I get it. You beat Buffalo, but like Buffalo has started to show some signs of weakness the last couple weeks. No team in the NFL is immune to losing. Like, the Chiefs lost to the Colts. We're not going to sit here and say the Colts are Super Bowl contenders. And the Chiefs are probably, as of right now, like the best team in the NFL. So I think it's just a little ridiculous. Like, the Jets, they still have a lot of issues. Like you mentioned with the offensive line, like they're literally a bottom 5 offensive line in the NFL right now. I mean, that's not even just my opinion. Like, that's based on statistics and pressures allowed and sacks allowed and, you know, yards per play and all these kind of things. And this is a Shanahan scheme where the offensive line is incredibly crucial. So I don't know. I just think it's a slippery slope. I would not bench Zach Wilson. I don't think this roster, if they were to make the playoffs, would be able to beat a Buffalo team in the playoffs. I don't think they'd be able to beat Kansas City in the playoffs. Miami, you know, just some of those teams that you're going to have to go up against in the AFC, I don't think they'd be able to beat them because they would be a wild card spot. I don't think they could win this division. So I just don't think that starting Joe Flacco or Mike White's the answer. So just my 2 cents. Now, if they eventually at some point after the year or after next year are reevaluating and maybe want to move on from Zach Wilson, that's an entirely different discussion. But I just feel like when you pick the guy second overall, and also like people forget he's missed time. I don't even know how many like total games he's played in his career because he did miss time last year, I think, too, portion. And this year. Yeah. So he's probably just now about reached like a full season's worth of games. I think people need to like loosen the leash a little bit because, once again, just look at how everybody responded to Justin Fields and how quickly, like 4 games, everybody has all of a sudden completely flipped the script on him. So not out on Zach Wilson yet. Do think he deserves a bit more of a chance.
I want to add this last point too, and we're starting to see, and we usually see this, you know, in these coaching trees, but you see, you know, kind of with the Packers, and you're seeing it also, ironically, I'm not just ironically supposed to the LaFleur brothers, but his brother is the OC for the Jets too. Kind of starting to see, especially passing wise, their passing concepts being figured out by the league. The league's kind of catching up to that. And I'd say that because, you know, Kyle Shanahan, you know, they derive from him, but we're still seeing Shanahan going strong because, as you can see, he's the mastermind. You know, he may have taught him a few tricks, but as, you know, I'm sure anyone knows, probably kept a few ideas and, you know, crucial principles or, you know, ideologies to himself, as, you know, we see that he's still going strong with his offense, which, you know, we'll talk about later. But so yeah, I think that's an important factor to know is that Jets offense too, when I watch too, I know there's like 2 or 3 plays that I've seen consistently pop up on Twitter and such. But, like on this play, this guy was open and such. And a couple of them, especially this one like Denzel Mims down the middle. That was one time he was open. But other than that, like guys aren't getting open. And to all the Twitter people, sometimes too when a guy is open, like Zach was getting pressured and he had to run. So yes, he can't make that throw. He might have seen he was open. He's open, but he can't make that throw if he's got Matt Judon barreling down at him already. So important things to note. But nonetheless, not an impressive win for the Jets, to say the least. And for the Patriots, life goes on. Both teams 6-4, and that crazy old AFC East. So that division will definitely be interesting to keep an eye on going down this line. Staying in New York, to the other New York team, the New York Giants, they could not take care of business against the Detroit Lions, as the Lions get a big upset win, three in a row for Dan Campbell, 31-18. John, what are your thoughts on your rival Giants dropping one here?
I'm not surprised. Honestly, I felt the Giants were kind of over-exceeding based on the talent they have on their roster, all these kind of things. And I don't think their schedule has necessarily been that tough, but to end the season, the second half of the year, it is a lot tougher than it started out to be. So I'm not surprised that the Giants have dropped this one to the Lions. I believe I picked the Lions as well. Yeah, I took the Lions against the spread. And I didn't necessarily say they were going to win, but I felt like just the Giants, their offense is capped. Like I'm pretty sure I said that they're capped at about 24 points. They put up 18 in this one, and the Lions got 31. So even if they were able to get to that 24 points, they still lose. I just think that they have, unfortunately, a lot of injuries at the wide receiver room that didn't get any better this week with Wan'Dale Robinson tearing his ACL. Giants changed the field. Luckily, they already actually announced that next year they're going to be changing the field, but that's now 2 of your receivers that have torn their ACLs because of your turf. Well, I don't want to say because of the turf, but it definitely plays a factor. The stats have proven that. But overall, the Lions, they just showed up. They were stacking the box against Saquon Barkley. And I got into a little bit of a Twitter argument with some people saying that, Saquon, like, he doesn't deserve any blame for this. He didn't show up, and I think Saquon himself would say that. He did not have a good game. Obviously, the offensive line is still not great. There's still some injuries there. The wide receiver room's not great. Daniel Jones is great, so they can stack the box against you. But we've seen other running backs like Derrick Henry have to face that despite having Malik Willis and a bunch of bums at wide receiver and no left tackle and Taylor Lewan. And he still produced. And we've seen Saquon himself produce in previous weeks despite all these things. So he just didn't have a good game here. And when Saquon doesn't have a good game, I don't expect the Giants to pretty much ever win a game this season. So yeah, good win for the Lions, tough one for the Giants. And I know the coaching staff already knows this, but I think it just puts it even more in front and center that, like, you have to get Saquon Barkley the ball and you got to get him involved because, okay, he had 15 carries and he only got 22 yards. He only had 2 catches. Like, I don't know what it takes. Get screens, get him the ball in different ways because he is the playmaker that they need to carry this offense moving forward.
Main thing I want to add on to is, like, I'm agreeing with you, is obvious part. Daniel Jones had some mistakes, and we've mentioned that this New York team, there's a lot about ball control, long efficient drives, and then at least trying to get maybe even 3 points. But hey, we took up 8 minutes of clock, and that puts more pressure on you as an offense. But we saw Detroit did a good job of, like you already mentioned, limiting Saquon Barkley, especially in the run game, and then basically making Daniel Jones beat them. And we kind of saw unable to. He threw the ball 44 times. Granted, they were behind most of the game, but two interceptions, one big one by Aiden Hutchinson as well. And then, just sucks for Wan'Dale Robinson, unfortunately, that he got hurt, especially since he's kind of been getting going lately, and this was a very good game for him too. So hopefully he can get back healthy. But starting to see, like, the limitations, like you mentioned, of this Giants team come to light. Not the most explosive offense outside of number 26 out of Barkley. No one else really, especially now that they're stacking up these injuries, can really make plays outside of him. And then the defense, we've mentioned this Detroit offensive line very good, and I think they leaned on that obviously this game as Jamal Williams had a hat trick in terms of touchdowns. Saw DeAndre Swift get a little involved, and even Justin Jackson too, their third stringer, get involved. And then Jared Goff makes some timely throws. He has nothing too crazy, as he had a pretty poor stat line in regards to modern football numbers, but he did what they have to do. He did what they have to do to win, especially in outdoor conditions. And they get like I said, they get to continue the 3-game win streak for Mr. Dan Campbell. So good things building in Detroit, and we'll see if New York can adjust and keep their playoff prospects alive moving forward. So that was Giants and Lions. Now we go to a pretty good game too. This one was almost an upset, and it was the Philadelphia Eagles. They beat the Indianapolis Colts 17-16. Took Jalen Hurts basically carrying the team literally in terms of carries to get this win. John, what were your thoughts in regards to the Eagles giving Jeff Saturday his first loss?
Well, this game was a lot closer than I expected it to be. I thought the Eagles would come out and respond after last week and just blow them out. And that's not what happened. And I'm not saying the Eagles are frauds, but I'm putting them on fraud watch, because this is 3 weeks in a row that I have been disappointed by their performances. Barely beating Houston, and the run defense was a problem, which it's been a problem all year, mind you. Like I have been saying, like, okay, Jordan Davis, like, he's been a big issue. I actually looked into the stats before that. They were still struggling to stop the run. The issue is that without Jordan Davis, it's actually become even worse. So they're now, like, instead of being like the 25th worst run defense, they're now like the 30th worst run defense. And so they're like at the bottom of the league. And in this game, I mean, it wasn't like groundbreaking, but Jonathan Taylor was able to move the ball for the most part. He wasn't super efficient with it, but he did have 84 yards on the ground. So I don't know. It's just, to me, the Colts offense is just going through a bit of a weird patch, to where the run game isn't as effective with their running backs as it used to be. And Jalen Hurts is not, I don't know, when they're not running the ball as efficiently as they used to be, it feels like Jalen Hurts kind of reverts a little bit back to his old self sometimes, to where he completely avoids the middle of the field. He's not throwing deep as much. I don't know if that's coaching. I don't know if that's Jalen Hurts himself. I'm not sure, because I haven't paid attention a ton to like the play calls the Eagles are running out there. But overall, I don't know. I just think the Eagles have some pretty obvious weaknesses right now, and they got to start to clean it up, because games like this, especially if they dropped this one, they're starting to potentially open the door for the Cowboys or the Giants, if either of them can get hot here at the end of the year, to maybe steal that, division crown from them, which could be the difference between a first round bye and, having to go on the road in the wild card round.
Was a little bit surprising how close this game was, but from watching this game, I'm a little more impressed with Philly than I guess you were. I think it's important to credit that 50 of those 84 Jonathan Taylor rushing yards he got were on that first drive. And then after that, I mean, it seems like Philly kind of figured out how to slow them down, because after that was just field goals, and he didn't do much from there. But I am with you. I am a little bit concerned about the Philadelphia offense. Granted, I think it's important to note that Indianapolis still has a pretty good front defense, especially the front four. Pretty good at stopping the run. So it wasn't too much of a shock to me that they were able to slow down the traditional run game with Miles Sanders and Boston Scott not doing much at all. But yeah, in regards to the Philly pass offense, would like to see a little more. I mean, they had a few creative wrinkles. They had, but I think what you mentioned too, throwing down the middle, those kind of concepts, didn't see much of that, at least being utilized or thrown. Saw some interesting comebacks to Devonta Smith. They kind of milked that cow for literally a couple plays, but then Indianapolis adjusted, and then they struggled again, and that's how some of their drives went until late, where it seemed like Jalen Hurts just started tucking the ball and running on some of those plays, because like I said, seems like teams maybe are adjusting, maybe not defending, maybe the middle of the field. I don't know how he really got open on some of those runs. Granted, too, playing this team, I can imagine, kind of wears you down over time. With the read option, and we know that Philly has a good offensive line, so maybe that's a little bit credited there too. But I'm not willing to really put them on fraud alert myself. But like we're seeing, like I mentioned, we're in the midpoint of the season, and now, a lot of teams kind of know what, some teams are good and aren't good at. So from here on out, it's all about how you can adjust to your weaknesses or, compensate for them going forward. So we'll have to see if the Philly run defense will still be an issue. And then obviously, if their passing offense can get going, because starting to see that slow down the run game, you slow down the whole Philly offense. And obviously, if you don't give the ball over to their defense, because earlier in the year their defense was scoring too and creating turnovers, and now that teams have been running on them, obviously being a little more ball control centric that way. So Eagles scrape one out there against the Colts, go to 9-1. Colts 4-6-1. So a little bit down the AFC path they go. But keeping in the AFC, we're going to go to quote unquote Buffalo, even though they played at Detroit. The Bills, they took care of business against the Browns 31-23. Bills, though, felt like they never really, were in trouble this one. John, what were your thoughts in regards to the Bills taking care of business?
They did good. There was certain points in this game where it looked like maybe they might let it slip, but they held on strong when they needed to, despite the Browns making sort of a late push. Stephon Diggs didn't get super involved in the first half, and he was showing some frustrations, but eventually he figured it out, and he got going. And I think that was kind of a key to Buffalo's overall offense getting back on track. So, yeah, not too surprised about anything. The only thing I was really surprised about was Amari Cooper actually had some semblance of success on the road, which is not normal for Amari Cooper. But other than that, I mean, nothing crazy. They handled their business in Detroit. And for the Browns, I will say things are getting interesting because Deshaun Watson is about to come back.
Yeah, but we'll see because they're 3-7. So the whole, and then they have another game to play. So their whole may be pretty bad. So it'll be interesting to see if they, rush him back or wait to try to see if the storm blows over or whatever. But also, I imagine they play him now thinking about it. I remember they gave up draft picks for him. So I want to give credit to the Buffalo run defense. I thought that Cleveland would have more, more success in the run game. But Nick Chubb held 14 carries for 19 yards. I did not expect that. Kareem Hunt, had a solid day, but you mentioned Amari Cooper had a good game air-wise, and same with Donovan Peoples-Jones. But, Bills defense, and most of that, too, was in the fourth quarter late in the game. So, maybe Bills defense playing a little more safe there. But it may be a cause for concern for the Bills. It's important to note that they still don't have obviously, Micah Hyde out. And I think, is Jordan Poyer also out for the rest of the year, too? I forget his injury.
I don't think so.
But regardless, I know he's been out for some time. Sure. So I think we're starting to see the importance of those two guys. Obviously, Tre'Davious White's still working his way back. So, this Buffalo defense starting to kind of, get a little cracked and exposed here, maybe down the stretch in different ways, overcompensating for the run, which leaves them having some holes in the back end. But nonetheless, they got the win. Do want to give credit to them, too. I'm not sure if this is because they play on Thursday. Do they play on Thursday? Yeah, they play Lions on Thursday. But they did lean on the run game more. And granted, too, we've mentioned Cleveland, not a great run defense anyway. So maybe I'm not sure if that was part of the game plan, thinking ahead, or just part of the game plan also to win this game. Probably both, win-win there. So credit to them. And your guy, James Cook, had a pretty good game, too. Finally got some momentum building, too. So him and Singletary both had 80 apiece. And Josh Allen only ran 3 times. So, hey, you'll take that, especially with an elbow injury. So, I've been interested to see how they look on Thursday, if they have a similar approach. Probably not, though. But, good to see the Bills kind of winning in different ways going down the stretch here. And we'll see if their defense can hold up as they wait for some reinforcements. But, Bills get the big win there over the Cleveland Browns. Now we go over to Atlanta, where the Falcons, they hung on and beat the Chicago Bears 27-24. Very similar styles of these two teams, but the Falcons pull ahead, John. And unfortunately, Justin Fields also got hurt in this one. What were your thoughts on the Falcons' victory?
Good win for the Falcons. Shout out to Cordell Patterson. NFL record 9 kickoff return touchdowns. The GOAT kickoff returner, not punt returner. That's still Devin Hester. But kickoff returns, he has the most in NFL history. Impact player, just came back from injury and he was able to do that. Yeah, so good win for the Falcons. Unfortunately for them, Kyle Pitts did get injured. I think this maybe will free up all the fantasy managers like myself who have been suffering alongside Kyle Pitts and just starting him because you feel like the talent at some point it's got to work. And it's very clear this passing attack is just it's good enough to win games, I guess, because they're good at running the ball, but very clearly is never going to really get going. Even despite the injury, he still led them in receiving yards at 43, even though he did not finish the game. So prayers up for Kyle Pitts that he's been placed on IR, probably going to miss the rest of the season, but that he can recover quickly. And for the Bears, couldn't get it done. Didn't have the greatest day in terms of players not named, Justin Fields or David Montgomery, pretty much. Like, those are the two that were carrying the offense. Fields, 153 passing yards, 85 rushing yards. Montgomery, 67 rushing yards, 54 receiving yards. Like, those two are really the playmakers, but outside of them, not a ton was going on. Chase Claypool, I'm kind of surprised how little he's actually been involved. I think since they traded for him, he's got like 5 catches for 35 yards total. Seems like you'd maybe really want to get him involved and like utilize his athleticism. Doesn't seem like they've really had any like crazy big plays that they're trying to utilize him for. It's kind of partially due to the fact they're really run heavy and their offensive line's not that great, but I figured maybe they would like scheme some stuff up. We'll see. But yeah, with the Justin Fields injury, he is day to day, but I don't know. If you're the Bears, like, be cautious. Like, you don't want to sit here and risk anything with him. You're 3-8. You're not really playing for much. If you got to throw in the backup for a week or two, do it, because there's no reason to rush him.
Yeah. And hey, maybe that gives teams less tape on how to, figure how to slow them down in the offseason too. So kind of a little bit of a win-win, because we all, no offense, Bears fans, we all know y'all probably are not making the playoffs, especially now that you're 3-8. Yeah, I want to add on too. I think I mentioned to you, like, I also am a Kyle Pitts owner. And I was like, okay, I'm feeling I'm trying to feel the Kyle Pitts pulse. I started him, and I should have known Podkers. So I think this one falls on me for believing in Kyle Pitts this week. I thought this was the week that maybe just randomly it would happen. He would blow up. Didn't happen, and I got him.
To be fair, he was doing really well until he got hurt. Like 43 yards.
That's a good Kyle Pitts game. I mean,
but for their passing attack, that's a lot of yards, and he didn't even get to finish the game.
Like you said, led in receptions, yards, and targets too. He had 5 targets. No one else had more than 3, which was Drake London. He only had 1 catch for 2 yards. So that goes to show you, I guess these two teams. But credit the Falcons. They're just really well coached. All 3 phases. I know that we mentioned not the most talented, but hey, they're still finding ways to be relevant. Heck, they got a better record than my Packers, and they're still in this race, whether we like it or not, at 5-6. And kind of, once again, Arthur Smith coming from Tennessee, similar style, similar mindset. Run the ball, make a few timely throws, and play. Obviously, they don't have as good defense as Tennessee, but sound defense and make life hard. So, credit to them. And Cordarrelle, the huge kickoff return, that was a big turning point too, because their offense really didn't do all that much outside of that. So big win for the Falcons to keep their playoff hopes alive, and unfortunately quashing the Bears along with that. And we'll see how the Bears approach the Justin Fields injury going forward for this week. Speaking of injuries, now we go to New Orleans, where unfortunately this game, although final score was close, didn't really feel that way, as the Saints, they beat the Rams 27-20. Matthew Stafford left this game with a concussion, and basically once he left, kind of was game over, at least for me. But John, what were your thoughts in regards to the Andy Dalton vintage performance?
Surprising, especially after kind of all the drama surrounding Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston. Kind of figured this might be the final nail in the coffin. It's not the greatest of Rams teams, but they haven't had great performances against, similar teams recently. So you figured that maybe this is the game that, they finally bring back Jameis. And Andy Dalton responds, 260 yards, 3 touchdowns, 21 for 25. He played a really good, efficient game. But for the Saints, I don't know, good win, I guess, but still kind of meaningless, because it feels like their season is already pretty much lost. And although it is a good win, the Rams are just kind of a dumpster fire right now. Matthew Stafford didn't even get to finish the game, so Bryce Perkins comes in. Their run game is still in shambles. Like, surprisingly, Cam Akers and Kyron Williams were able to have some success getting over 100 yards on the ground combined, but still, like, tuning into this game during parts of it, it didn't feel like game changing. Like, it didn't feel like they were really putting together the greatest of drives. I don't know. It was just interesting, especially since, like, they put up 20 points. One of those touchdowns was on like a deep bomb to Tutu, pretty sure it's Tutu Atwell, for like 60 yards. And so, they just didn't move the ball super efficiently throughout the day. And for the Rams, I don't know. It seems like they just need to shut down the season because you're now sitting at 3-7. Cup's out for the next 6 to 8 weeks. Stafford's been dealing with concussions the last 2 weeks. You've released Darrell Henderson now. I don't know. The Rams, it's tough. And in this game, it was just a battle of two teams that are just not doing that great, and wasn't the greatest of games.
Yeah, I don't have much else to add. I mean, it kind of goes to show you, yes, you can win a Super Bowl by going all in like the Rams did have, but, especially when you're a top-heavy team, Matthew Stafford's been dealing with injury, Cooper Kupp, you lose what little depth you have over the offseason, with on your offensive line and on defense, but especially on offense. And yeah, it's tough to replicate and fill in those gaps. And we're kind of seeing that with the Rams. It's important to note too, probably why they're still trying to win New Orleans, especially, is neither of these teams have their first round pick. Gosh, I don't even know if the Rams have a second round pick, but nonetheless, pick positioning isn't all too important to them because it's not really a thing for them. So big win, encouraging win for New Orleans. It'll be interesting to see how they handle this whole Jameis Winston situation, because as we've seen since the departure of Drew Brees, they have had a little bit. Quarterback has been a little bit of an issue for them figuring out who's going to be their guy. They've had a little bit of misfortune with injuries and such. So I'm interested to see what step they take going forward, and especially because they also have that big Taysom Hill contract as well, which I know is like incentive based and such too, but that could be an issue as well. So we'll see what they do going forward. And for the Rams, it's good night. We'll see y'all in 2023. Maybe, unless, some of them retire. Who knows? But that is that. The New Orleans Saints take care of business there. Now we go to Baltimore, where this was a very uneventful game, where the Ravens kind of escaped this one 13-3 against the Panthers. Very close game to the fourth, and then a couple late turnovers helped the Ravens kind of pull this one out. What were your thoughts in regards to this game, John?
I didn't really pay attention to this game that much because there really wasn't a whole lot going on, and usually I watch Red Zone. So I guess resilient way for the Ravens to come out and win, but honestly, I kind of expected better against a pretty lowly Panthers team that just doesn't really have a whole lot going for them right now. So I don't know. Like I said, good win for the Ravens, I guess. And, you are dealing with injuries, especially at the wide receiver room. So I guess you can kind of cut them some slack. But good performance from their defense. Can't really say a ton about their offense. Don't have much to say.
Yeah, I will say for Carolina, maybe once again we're talking about maybe exposing some issues that teams may have. Baltimore, they were not afraid really of their wide receivers. I know Demarcus Robinson was the only one that had a really good game, and he's probably because he was the best one, the only guy that was really beating his guy constantly. They're leaving their receivers all on islands and loading the box, not letting that run game go off. We kind of saw the Ravens offense struggle, and once again, I don't think that's really on Lamar. It's just the fact that, the fact that Demarcus Robinson is probably his best, or was his best receiver this day, and probably going forward his most reliable receiver. Not named Mark Andrews, but Mark Andrews is a tight end, and he had a solid game. But other than that, Baltimore's got to find other ways to get their pass game going, because it seems like, as per usual, as we've seen in previous years, it's like, oh, okay, their passing offense looks good, they have a few more tricks, but then the tricks run out. Teams know how to defend them. Okay, now what can you do? So we'll see if they Greg Roman and Lamar can get in the lab and figure that out. And for Carolina, we're talking about books closed. I think the book is closing on Baker Mayfield as a starter. Apparently, I think there was that report, right? I think they said Sam Darnold will be starting this next week, apparently. So we'll see how it falls out. But fortunately for Baker, this second chance per se has not really gone as planned for him or the Carolina Panthers as well. So they fall 3-8. Baltimore keeps trucking along at the top, chasing the top of the AFC. Now, let me head over to another interesting game here. Not interesting, joking. It was the Commanders and Washington Commanders and Houston Texans. Commanders win 23-10. Kind of what we all expected. Texans obviously, I'm safe to say it, bottom of the league basically, and Commanders been riding hot recently. What are your thoughts, if any, on this turnout?
Washington, they're playing Houston. Houston, not that great of a team overall, not that great of a run defense. And in this game, it kind of went as expected. Antonio Gibson shows up, 72 yards rushing. Brian Robinson shows up, 57 yards rushing. That won him the game, really. Like, Taylor Heineke didn't have to do too much, 191 passing yards. And overall, good performance, I guess, from their defense because they completely destroyed Dameon Pierce. They were playing from behind a lot, but 10 carries and he only had 8 yards. That defense showed up pretty big time. So shout out to them. But otherwise, kind of with the Texans, they're 1-8-1. They're the worst team in the league. You know how to beat them. It's kind of just show up, run the ball, move on, kind of a thing.
Just get a lead. Just don't let them, lean on Dameon Pierce. Once you get over 2 possessions, it's pretty much over. But yeah, in regards to shutting down the run game, that is my defensive ball of the week. Jonathan Allen, him and Daron Payne, wreaking havoc down there. Big reason why Dameon Pierce can get going, and also though he contributed with 2 sacks as well for sack numbers as well. So kind of one of the more underrated defensive linemen in the league, especially defensive line groups. We kind of see though that this defense kind of doing what we thought they would do last year, and they do get Chase Young back here soon. So it's like a year late here, Washington. I expected this last year, but they're starting to find some momentum. Taylor Heineke, like you mentioned, playing well, and it's fortunate that Carson, it's basically not going to be the starter, but like we mentioned before, understandable. Taylor Heineke's can take care of the ball much more than Carson Wentz will. Although, Wentz may make a highlight play, 1 or 2 more highlight plays than Heineke. Is it worth the risk? Ron Rivera says no. So, good win for the Washington Commanders, what we expected. And Houston, at this point, just probably perusing over who they will take first overall come April. So, that went as expected. Now we go in some of the more afternoon games, starting with an AFC West divisional matchup between the Broncos and the Raiders. It was an exciting one, John, at Mile High. The Raiders pull off the win in overtime, 22-16. What were your thoughts on this one?
Well, I thought that, if there was any week that the Broncos offense would get it going, it'd be against the Raiders. So the last time they played was the game in which they had the most offensive success. They did lose the last time they played, but they did have the most offensive success. They did not in this one. Russell Wilson didn't have that bad of a game. I still find it interesting that, he didn't have the greatest game, but people continually just push for him to be the issue. But it's okay, are we for other teams, we often criticize the lack of running ability, especially inefficiency. The Broncos are terrible at running the ball. Their offensive line has not been great. The run play calling is, it's just kind of standard run of the mill stuff. And it does suck because Javonte Williams got hurt and he was supposed to be the bell cow. But the replacements, Melvin Gordon, Latavius Murray, just did not perform. Latavius Murray, 2.9 yards per carry. Melvin Gordon, 3.9 yards per carry. And then he eventually gets cut after the game because he had another fumble, which I think was his 5th on the year, which is just unacceptable. And then, unfortunately, Chase Edmonds does get hurt and has been placed on IR with a high ankle sprain. So, I don't know. I like the Broncos, all the issues are still the same as they were, 2 months ago. And it's even hurt even more with the injuries. You don't have Jerry Jeudy all of a sudden, and, your other receivers, even as much as I love Courtland Sutton, not creating separation, not getting open enough. He had a pretty crucial drop on a 3rd down. I believe in the first half, Russell Wilson only had 2 incompletions, one of which was just a well-covered play, but the other one was the drop that Courtland Sutton had, and it was he was open, it was 3rd down, it was placed right on him, and he just dropped it. And listen, I love Courtland Sutton, to a fault. I have him in way too many fantasy leagues, and it's not good for me. But But overall, yeah, the Broncos, their offense was not good enough in a game where they should have had a good offensive performance. But the Raiders on the other side, Derek Carr, way to show up. 307 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not that he hasn't been showing up, but against a really tough Broncos defense, this is a really good performance. Josh Jacobs, 109 yards on the ground. Devontae Adams doing Devontae Adams things. I don't know how he gets so open. Like, it's honestly kind of crazy, especially against, like, this is Patrick Surtain, who's been locking people up, and Devontae still showing his alpha status, and he sauced him on that overtime play. Just completely had Surtain thinking that it was something, a completely different play, and he beat him. So yeah, good win for the Raiders. I want to shout out Max Crosby, my defensive baller of the week. 2 sacks. He had a forced fumble that was the fumble that Melvin Gordon had that eventually led to Melvin Gordon getting cut. I feel like you get extra points if you force that. But overall, he was just a big difference maker, because this was not a blowout. This was not a easy win for the Raiders by any means. This went to overtime, and if he doesn't maybe make those plays that he made, this could have gone very differently. So shout out to Max Crosby, my defensive ball of the week. And I feel like I got to give him a little more props too, because in general, this Raiders front has been pretty pitiful in terms of pass rush production. And so when you see Max Crosby have this big of an impact, I think it means a little more. So yeah, good win for the Raiders. For the Broncos, I've kind of just given up on their offense at this point, figuring it out. I figured after the bye week, I figured maybe in this Raiders game, these were my 2 moments where I was like, they're going to get it clicking and maybe put up like 30 points. Haven't done it.
Yeah. Yeah. Chandler Jones, that's quietly been not very great addition for the Raiders, because he hasn't done much. But nonetheless, like you mentioned, they get the big win. Yeah, from what I've heard and seen on Twitter and such, some people have been saying that last play, just Devontae, and that's a credit to Devontae and Josh McDaniels for, I guess, a tendency breaker. They had kind of set up Cortland Sutton for that throughout the game, or throughout film. They knew that's how the Broncos defended that. That's what I'm assuming, because we all know Patrick Surtain, he's probably entered that top 5 cornerback conversation anyway. So very rarely see him get beat that badly. But yeah, credit Derek Carr and the offense for having success, especially under with the recent fire that Josh McDaniels has kind of received. One of our. Who I'm talking about. I already see one of our Raider faithful, was calling for his head a couple weeks ago. So hopefully this calms those flames down, as we see like the offense, is having production without Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller, probably their second and third best options.
I will say, though, they have 3 wins, and 2 of those are against the Broncos. So it's like, I can kind of understand Raiders fans being pretty upset.
But hey, I mean, like we just mentioned, they had a great success against this defense. So it's just, I think that's a good sign of things.
Yeah, but they did that last time too, and so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
it feels like if I was a Raiders fan, I'd be like, why don't we do that against every defense?
True. But yeah, and I think it'd be interesting to see how this Raiders team continues to fill out. Like I said before, give Josh McDaniels more time. We've seen good glimmers of hope that this offense can be something. They just need more time to get their pieces in place, because they're still dealing with the leftovers of John Gruden and Mike Mayock, as like I mentioned before, not been great moves. Some of them, especially the early picks, they're high investments. So Denver, I didn't know that Melvin Gordon got let go because of fumbling. Makes sense. Hurts as a Javonte Williams owner, because I'm like, where was this earlier? But yeah, it's a shame how quickly, and we talk about running back shelf life. Melvin may get another chance, but he's obviously never going to be the main guy, probably, by default for a team going forward, because kind of seeing a little dip in athletic ability, especially with that one big year, really, and fumbling has been an issue for him. But it's funny, but then Latavius Murray's still out here stealing people, not stealing, I should say that, but winning jobs and being the lead back for whatever team needs him, basically, and still going strong. But we'll see. I don't know. I don't have much more to say on the Denver offense. Like, it kind of is what it is. They are who we thought they were. That quote, it's become expectation, and we'll have to see what they do in the offseason to address this, to fix it, because I don't know.
The only thing I do want to add, too, is for anyone who's been very critical of Nathaniel Hackett, he did hand off play calling duties in this game, and there really wasn't that much of a difference. Like, it was Clint Kubiak. It was kind of just the same thing. So now that could just be maybe both of them are not great play callers, but I think, once again, it just goes to show their issues go a lot deeper than just Russ, just Hackett. There's a lot more to it than just that.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with these two teams. I don't think either of them. I think the Raiders have the first round pick, but Denver does not. So, kind of like I mentioned with New Orleans and the Rams, they're kind of playing for pride. They can't just afford to pack it in for the rest of the year because they don't have the first round pick. But anyways, now we go to another divisional matchup here against the Cincinnati Bengals and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Bengals win this one 37-30. I had that right in the spreadsheet, just making sure. 37-30. Lost. Joe Mixon this one. Just by the way, P. Ryan stepped in, had 3 touchdowns as well. Kind of had a Christian Watson situation, though, where he just kind of, really had 4 catches. So, nonetheless, Bengals kind of showing that their offense is back. Pittsburgh, though, had a pretty good performance here. John, what were your thoughts in regards to this AFC North rivalry game?
Honestly, I was impressed by Pittsburgh. They put up 30 points here, and they could have put up more. George Pickens dropped what would have been a 49-yard touchdown late in the game. I think they settled for a field goal on that drive. So, they could have had about 34. But regardless, I was really impressed. Like I said, they put up a fight here. Going into halftime, they were winning 20-17. It was just the late flurry from the Bengals that showed up. Joe Burrow, great game. Way to stay resilient despite throwing 2 interceptions. He had 4 touchdowns. T. Higgins showing he's a playmaker. He's a baller. And good for P. Ryan just being ready, stepping up, because Joe Mixon has kind of been a workhorse all year. P. Ryan's barely really got involved. And when his number got called, he showed up and, he had 3 touchdowns. So for the most part, I'm not really taking too much away from this game, but I will say Najee Harris was getting a lot of criticism for most of the year, quietly starting to put it together, had a pretty decent game last week. This week, he goes for 90 yards, 2 touchdowns, also 26 yards receiving, so over 100 total yards. And the big knock on him has been efficiency, 4.5 yards per carry, which is, pretty dang good. So shout out to Najee Harris, because despite the loss, I just think that he's been getting a lot of flack recently, and I think he's kind of quietly started to just rebound a little bit.
Yeah, and I think you've seen that offensive line starting a little bit, starting to gel a little bit, live up to a little bit of the but obviously of the coach's expectations. That line's starting to be a little better the offense was surprising this week. Pratt Freiermuth's been quietly been very consistent too for them, regardless of the quarterback or the situation. It is a little bit interesting. I'm not sure if, if this is scheme, if it's just because of, the young quarterback / Mitch Trubisky. He's not really young. But Deontay Johnson hasn't really been a force this season. And I'm not sure if that's because of Deontay or, once again, this offense. Just something to keep an eye out. I'm just want to bring that up for, in case anyone is in the full know, because he did get that contract extension in the offseason. Granted, it was pretty, I don't say fair, but an interesting gamble for both sides. It's only like a 2-year, $36 million extension. I got it here per Spot Track. So who knows what, if he can get going in that offense with those guys going forward. But yeah, big win for Bengals. I think they're starting to show that, hey, we can win without Jamar Chase, and they're starting to, find that offensive flow and rhythm that they did kind of towards the end of last season. Granted, this was a Steelers defense that, with no Micah Parsons in the secondary, so who knows how much he would have impacted the game. Maybe would have helped out more on T. Higgins, since T. Higgins had a monster game too. Maybe he limits him if he plays. But nonetheless, you play with who you play with, and the Bengals pull out the win there. So we see their offense clicking. And speaking of offenses clicking, now we go to your game, John. Your Cowboys were clicking on both sides of the ball against the Minnesota Vikings. Had a ruin, a little homecoming for them that handed them the first home loss of the season, and very much so. Your Cowboys won this one 40-3. Vikings did not score after the first quarter, so that 3 was in the first quarter, mind you. So yeah, table's yours, man. What was your thoughts on this victory?
I love the way they responded after last week, a pretty dejecting loss to the Packers, and you come out, you're angry. Micah Parsons was talking a big talk the whole week, saying the defense would not let down the offense again. And then they come out and they hold the Vikings to 3 points. It's kind of an excessive way to respond, I guess, but that's what I want to see So I'm glad they responded this way, because a lot of Cowboys teams throughout my life, they ride hot, and then all of a sudden a loss like that Packers loss last week, that could have been something that snowballs. And so I was happy to see the way they responded in this one. For the Vikings, I mean, it's a flash in the pan. You live and you learn. They're still 8-2, so it's not like it's the end of the world. But that being said, I still think there were some pretty serious issues that kind of got exposed here. Namely the offensive line without Christian Darrisaw. He got hurt at some point, and the depth was not there at tackle, because Kirk Cousins was pressured on 65% of his dropbacks, which is kind of an absurd rate. Like, if anyone remembers that Chiefs Buccaneers Super Bowl, Mahomes was pressured on like 38%, and that felt like a lot. So now crank that up to like not double, but almost double, and we're getting to what Kirk Cousins is pressured on in this game. So it just shows that the Cowboys defensive line controlled this one. So like, I do cut some slack to guys like Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Adam Thielen, the receivers, because, and Kirk Cousins as well, because it's like, you don't have time. Like, you can't do anything deep downfield. Now, they could have ran the ball a little bit more. I was surprised that early in the game they didn't like really try to rely on the run heavy while it was still within reach, because once you got to about midway through the second quarter, you kind of have to start abandoning that, because like the Cowboys were putting up points. So, and despite that, when they did run the ball, like Dalvin Cook averaged 6.5 yards per carry. So they had success. It was just they got so far behind that they couldn't do it. So I think for the Vikings, that's a situation where, once again, you live and you learn. And maybe next time, if you're coming out against a really tough defensive front that can get after your quarterback, maybe you just try to slow the pace of the game really early and not allow that to happen to where you get into this, crazy deficit, and then you have to throw, and then you're playing into the strengths of the other team. Good win for the Cowboys. Really strong way to respond. Still not a fan of how long they kept the starters out there. Like, 37-3 midway through the third quarter, and you still got Dak and Micah and all these guys. Like, midway through the third, if you're up that big, pull them. Like, I don't care if people find it disrespectful or whatever. Like, if you're trying to make a playoff run, we don't need people getting hurt in meaningless snaps at the end of the game when it's like a total blowout. But otherwise, shout out to the Cowboys. Shout out to Tony Pollard, my offensive baller of the week. 15 carries, 80 rushing yards, 6 receptions, 109 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. He essentially was the Cowboys offense. Tony Pollard, he's a beast. And I do want to shout out Kellen Moore, because I'm very critical of him. But this felt like the game where it feels like, okay, they're actually using both Pollard and Zeke correctly. If you look at the stat sheet, you're going to go, oh, Zeke, 2.8 yards per carry. That's not efficient. But in large part, that's because when they used him, it was for short yarded situations like 3rd and short, 3rd and 2, on the goal line, stuff like that, on, pass blocking moments, because those are the things that Zeke is really good at in this point in his career. And so, he wasn't super efficient, but he got what he needed to get for the offense to keep moving. And then you use Pollard for all the explosive stuff, like the receiving game, and like the big runs on 1st and 2nd down. So shout out to Kellen Moore, because I did think he had a pretty good game.
Yeah, I mean, he took the main words out of my mouth. I mean, the main point is that the game kind of went the way that Dallas wanted to, and that played to their strengths. Is once you got ahead, Vikings couldn't stay consistent with the run game, and like you mentioned too, Kirk Cousins was under siege all game, got sacked 7 times, and there's also saw a couple of penalties by Minnesota's offensive line, probably because they were getting their butts whooped by Dallas. And so, those type of things, they set you back and kind of make you one-dimensional, which, as we mentioned before, and Dallas got a pretty good pass defense, in terms of pass rush and secondary. So, and I think too, important to note that, especially early on, they weren't overly aggressive, like they were against Green Bay, and not leaving, guys one-on-one, purely one-on-one that aren't named Trevon Diggs on people, playing a little bit of some zones and some creative stuff off that. And then once they got the lead, even then didn't really matter. They could ramp up the aggression because they could afford to. But yeah, I think just a little unfortunate for Minnesota, home game off that big win, and you kind of drop an egg there. But yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say the sky is falling for Minnesota. I think, we know this offense is talented. But it'll be interesting about this defense going forward because, Dallas, like you already mentioned, had their way with him. Dak Prescott quietly having a 22 for 25, extremely efficient game, but also, pushing the ball downfield along with that. So, that should quiet down the Cooper Rush crowd for a while longer. So, big win for your Cowboys as they have a game in a couple of days, obviously, since they play on Thanksgiving. So, now we go to the Sunday night game, and it was quite an interesting one. Lived up to the previous matchup, and it was the Chiefs beating the Chargers 30-27. Chiefs lost some receivers going into this game, and they lost some guys in this game, and it didn't matter as they pulled out this one. John, what were your thoughts in regards to this big win by the Chiefs?
Chiefs, they just put on an offensive clinic. Patrick Mahomes had a great game. Isaiah Pacheco had 100 yards on the ground rushing. Travis Kelce doing Travis Kelce things. It was unfortunate for them that Kadarius Toney did. I don't know what injury it was, but he re-aggravated something, I think. And so he was not able to play for most. Yeah, hamstring. So he was not able to play for most of the game, and they were already missing Juju Smith-Schuster and Mecole Hardman. So they're starting to get a little thin at the receiver room, but it was nice to see Sky Moore, their second-round draft pick, 5 receptions, 63 yards. So he did get involved. And, of course, Travis Kelce, he's always going to ball out and pick up the slack for people. So that was great. For the Chargers, I thought they once again played a really competitive game. Justin Herbert had a really good performance. It was great to see initially Keenan Allen and Mike Williams both out there again, but then Mike Williams on his one lone reception on the sideline did re-aggravate his ankle sprain. They said it wasn't serious, so maybe he misses another week or two and then comes back. For his sake, I'm hoping that he can come back soon because this offense, at least on that one drive, they looked a lot better. The field looked a lot more open. And then even without Mike Williams, just having Keenan Allen there, it just opened up more stuff because you just have another guy who can just consistently get open. So the Chargers, they look good too. The issue is still their defense, specifically the run defense. Like Isaiah Pacheco averaging 7 yards a carry is just not really going to get it done. But yeah, I mean, I was really impressed with Justin Herbert, specifically on that second to last drive they had to take the lead. I saw specifically Emmanuel Acho, who I'm not the biggest fan of, criticizing Justin Herbert for the interception he threw on the last drive. But it's like, okay, basically Justin Herbert goes clutch mode and takes the lead late, and then Patrick Mahomes responds by going even more clutch mode and retakes the lead late. And now with 30 seconds left, you're sitting here criticizing Herbert because he threw an interception when he's trying to go down the fild and make something happen.
And was it I'm sorry, yes, was it like a deflection interception too? Like, if I remember correctly, I think.
I can't remember. It might have been. Regardless, I don't know. I just feel like I think Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and some of these guys, Herbert is kind of lumped in them with the arm talent, but they've kind of spoiled us as of recently with these 13-second drives with timeouts to get down to the field and get a field goal, or the Bills against the Vikings a couple weeks ago, just quick to get down the field and get a field goal. People just expect these quarterbacks who, once again, Herbert is lumped in with those guys in terms of arm talent, but they just expect these quarterbacks to just be able to put anything together no matter how much time is left on the clock. It's just not realistic to always expect. So I still think that Justin Herbert had a great game, and I do think that criticizing him for that interception is just kind of dumb because for 59 minutes of football, he was excellent on the field, dueling with Patrick Mahomes, especially despite the fact that, Mike Williams was supposed to play and then he gets ruled out, and they still, went out and they executed the offense the way they needed to. We're going to criticize him because of one bad throw. I do think he deserves criticism for it because, you did have 2 minutes left on there and you do want to go out there and win the game. And I did think Emmanuel Acho's point of if that was Tua, he would have been slayed by the media for a month. I do think that was fair, but at the same time, I don't think any quarterback with that amount of time left should necessarily be slandered by the media because they didn't drive down and, put their team in position to win the game.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had heard about him, about that he was critical of him, but 31 seconds. Come on, people. And the first play gets sacked by Chris Jones. So the internal clock's okay, I can't afford to take another sack because then it's 3rd and 20 plus. And if I remember correctly, it was, which I couldn't pull it up, but I think it was a bit of a deflection too, and the ball popped up. I'm sure you may find it. But so I wouldn't fully fault Herbert. And once again, yeah, like it's a pretty tough situation he was put in. Regardless, don't care who you have. So yeah, and otherwise, I mean, once again, he put them in a position earlier to that literally put them ahead. So it's not like he didn't deliver in the fourth quarter in the clutch moments. Literally put them ahead, and then Mahomes and the gang, and especially Travis Kelce, they did what they did, and they just marched down the field, unfortunately. And he didn't have any time, but yeah, that main thing is Travis Kelce. I expected him to start slowing down a couple of years ago, basically at this point, but he really hasn't. Especially expected this year for him to slow down because no Tyreek. I thought he'd get more double teams, and I can't fault the Chargers once again. I think in regards to you mentioned the Justin Herbert overanalyzation basically by Acho. Same here. I saw a couple people like, oh, why are they leaving Derwin James on one-on-one all night? But I'm like, like it's Derwin James. Like against pretty much every other tight end or guy inside, he's kind of won that matchup for the most part this year. But this game, Kelce got the better of him, and I'm assuming next time when they meet, maybe they'll try a different approach as opposed to just pick and choose when they have one-on-one moments. Because Derwin James did have some moments where he won that matchup against Kelce, some pass breakups and such, and just blanketing him. But you can only contain great players for so long. So Kelce's my baller of the week. 6 receptions, 110 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Obviously, each one of them crucial, especially with those receivers out. And I do want to credit Andy Reid too. You mentioned the patience with the run game. I felt he could have been more patient, but there were times, I think, especially in the second half. In the first half, I felt like there were times they'd do a chunk run, and then first down, they'd throw the ball incomplete, and then it'd be 3 and out, or the drive kind of stalled. And then second half, though, he was more consistent when they started gashing them, maybe following it up with another run and just being more patient as opposed to just running just to run like he sometimes does or feels like. So yeah, big win for the Chiefs though, as they stay atop the AFC, and for the Chargers, just makes life tougher for them to sneak into the playoffs. And yeah, great performance. I still. In regards to Herbert, what up? What'd you say?
So on the interception, it's 2nd and 15. He did just get sacked the play before. I don't know what the play before was. It looked like it was a QB draw because Herbert got it and then he immediately stepped up in the pocket like 2 steps and then got sacked by Chris Jones. So they had to burn a timeout. So it's 26 seconds left, 2nd and 15. They're on their own 20-yard line. So they got to go 80 yards to score a touchdown, or they got to go, I don't know, probably like
30, 40.
50 to 60 yards to get near the field goal range. Herbert steps back, and within 2 seconds, Chris Jones is in the backfield, and they only rushed 4. He is in the backfield. Like I've paused it 2 seconds after the play started, and Chris Jones is 7 yards deep on the ground already because Herbert avoided him. But when he avoided him, he goes out to the left, and now I think it's Frank Clark, number 55, is literally in his face. Within 3 seconds of the play being called, Chris Jones has moved in, Herbert has evaded him, and now Frank Clark has moved past the tackle, is in his face with his hand up, could sack him if he just dove at him, but Herbert's backing up. So as Herbert's backing up, Frank Clark hits him. He throws it to, I think it's Keenan Allen, and it was double covered. They tip the ball up, and a third guy comes in and gets the interception. So, yeah, it is what it is. Like I said, not the greatest of throws, but he's literally under pressure.
He's got 2 guys in his face, like you just said. Like he got 2 guys in his face before he can even set his feet, and really,
And this is almost instantly too. And once again, they don't have their big body Mike Williams out there, so he doesn't have a contested guy. So just okay, I'm screwed. Just throw it to that guy, and he'll make a contested catch. So if he takes a sack here, you lose another 7 yards. It's now third, and
you're gonna have to take a timeout.
Another timeout. So it's 3rd and 22 with 15 seconds left. You have 1 timeout. You're not going to get it at that point. So he tries to make a play. It wasn't there for him. Even if he throws it away, it's now 3rd and 15 with 15 seconds left. You still have 2 timeouts,
it's a little bit more manageable than 3rd and 20 with 1 timeout.
Yeah, but it's still impossible. So he's trying to make a play there because, once again, they have to get a field goal here. So it's not like you just got to survive another down. No, you don't have that much time. So once again, not the greatest of decisions, but he was under siege. He's literally backing up to his left, too. It's not going to the right, to his left as a right-handed quarterback, and as he gets hit, he makes the throw.
Yeah, so let's chill with the overanalyzation. It's an impossible-ish moment there. What do you want him to do? No one else, only maybe two other guys have maybe clutched in that situation, but we've also seen them not convert then, and that's Mahomes and out, like you mentioned. So,
and also no quarterback is making that throw.
Yeah.
Like there was nobody open.
So, that's been our issue is that they haven't really had any. I know he had a good game, Josh Palmer, and we'll see if he can kind of be their deep threat, but they haven't really had that. And once again, too, they kind of stalled out in the second half as well until that late drive. That was their only points. So their offense still not fully functioning as they have been dealing with injuries. So big win for the Chiefs in the division and the conference. Now we go to the Monday Nighter over in Mexico City. Unfortunately for those fans, unless they were rooting for the Niners, it was it was a beatdown as the Niners took care of business 38-10 against Colt McCoy and the Arizona Cardinals. Although shouldn't be too shocked once you learn that, it's Colt McCoy out there starting. No offense to Colt, but yeah. But John, they're calling him Jimmy Garoppolo. He had 4 touchdowns. What were your thoughts in regards to the Niners basically stomping the Cardinals?
I don't have much to say. I mean, like, good win for the Niners. Kind of expected it. The Cardinals are just in disarray. Cliff Kingsbury, I'm still counting the days if he's potentially going to get fired. The Cardinals are using a backup quarterback in Colt McCoy, and I love Colt McCoy as much as the next guy, especially considering I grew up in Austin. Like, the guy's a legend here, but he's a backup quarterback for a reason, and this is an offense that is built around a very mobile quarterback, and Colt McCoy is not that. So you're having to change a lot of what you do offensively in terms of the run game, because your run game is almost entirely reliant on Kyler. They're not very good in terms of running the ball. They're one of the least efficient run offenses in the entire NFL, and they just cut Eno Benjamin a couple weeks ago, who's one of their best running backs. So now you got James Conner doing his normal thing, averaging 3 yards per carry. You got Keontae Ingram, who's a rookie, so it's kind of hard to expect him to do much. So he didn't really contribute. So the run game equated to about like 60 yards, and they didn't really do anything efficiently in that regard. And then on top of that, Hollywood Brown, he did come back from IR, or he didn't come back, but he started practicing, didn't end up getting to play in this game. Rondale Moore plays, gets hurt on like the first play of the game and doesn't return. Zach Ertz is not playing. Like, I don't know what people expected from the Cardinals in this one. Meanwhile, the Niners on the other side are getting healthy. You got Deebo Samuel back. You got Trent Williams back. You got Nick Bosa back. Like, everybody's getting healthy over there. Elijah Mitchell's back. So they're a very healthy team right now. And also, you go to Mexico, and very clearly, the Niners were the home team in this game because the Mexican fans truly loved the 49ers down there. They were booing the Cardinals, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Because Arizona is very close to the Mexican border. So anyway, good win for the Niners, but kind of saw it coming.
Yeah, I don't have much else to add. We're kind of seeing, okay, you don't have a star amazing quarterback. So what do? You have a great offensive mind around him, and you get him a bunch of weapons, and you kind of split. No, I don't say split, but make the difference there. And we're seeing, even though no one guy put up amazing numbers outside of maybe Kittle with 2 touchdowns, but he really had 4 receptions. It's who you going to guard? Kind of like we did with Kansas City. Like, who are you going to double? You can double Tyreek. That's fine. We have Travis Kelce. And here it's like, okay, you're going to focus your attention on McCaffrey. Okay, we have Debo, and the fact that they're moving these guys around, and different. One play Debo is a decoy, next play Chris. Like, I can't fault the Arizona defense, or really any defense, but especially Arizona. We mentioned not much. They have some talent, but it's not overall talent on defense, and especially if your offense isn't doing much on the other end, puts more pressure on you, gives San Francisco more opportunities. But and then Jimmy Garoppolo not really making mistakes. Didn't even take a sack this game either. It was just pure utter offensive domination by the Niners. They did whatever they wanted, and I know it's just the Cardinals, but still a little scary when you see at the NFL level. So kind of a big confidence building win for them, as you mentioned, as they basically are almost fully healthy. No Eric Armstead still too. So once he gets back, just another piece you have to worry about if you're playing them. And for the Cardinals, I mean, the Hard Knocks will be interesting, because I think our good Arizona representative mentioned that they let go of an offensive line coach too, which I ranted about in our group, and I was like, okay, so you're not a great running team, and you're mainly a quick throwing passing team, so not really much pressures on the offensive line. It's not like Colt McCoy got sacked like a million times. He got sacked 3 times, but it's Colt McCoy. Kyler probably would have, maybe escaped one or two of those. So you put, I don't know, I just feel like the offensive line coach, whoever their name is, got scapegoated there. So hopefully they find a job somewhere else. But yeah, the countdown, the Cliff Kingsbury firing watch continues for us. So those are our week 11 reactions. If you're wondering pick-wise, there's an update. John and I split the difference. I want to talk the Jets game, man. If it just goes to overtime, I cover because they probably would have scored a field goal. Granted, I'm not going to complain too much because the New England makes 2 field goals. They cover. So that was a little unfortunate. And then the Giants screwed me over. John got Detroit there, and then Indy came through for me and New Orleans. So kind of like how I predicted, split the middle. I don't think any of our locks, both of our locks missed. Kansas City couldn't cover, and for you it was Chicago. Chicago couldn't pull that one out, unfortunately. Literally a half point too. That was unfortunate. But anyways, we'll be back with our Thursday picks against the spread. Obviously, doing the Thanksgiving games. That will probably be a separate video. We'll try to get that up early as possible since we have a couple of those. But like I mentioned, we will be doing our week 12 picks later in the week. You can find us on YouTube, Shut Up and Ball, on all, like I said, podcast mediums. That's at Shut Up and Ball. Our main Instagram is our main social media platform. That's at Shut Up and Ball Pod. And Twitter and TikTok are just at Shut Up and Ball. And we have a Facebook page. So anyways, we will see you all later. Enjoy your Thanksgiving if you don't hear from us later. Adios.